Take it away.
Thank you so much, Yolanda. And I am honored to be a part of this meeting today and share with you. And I extend a special thank you to Wynn Cleveland for the invitation. So today I am committed to approaching today's presentation with humility, dignity, respect, and understanding. Because of the time constraints, it's impossible for me to really take a deep dive on this topic. However, I will cover some key aspects of diversity and inclusion, and hopefully the information that I share today will inspire you to expand your knowledge and seek additional training and resources in this area. So there are a few opportunities to engage throughout the presentation, and I will invite you and let you know when it's appropriate to enter your thoughts and comments in the chat box. During today's presentation, I will define diversity and inclusion, discuss conscious and unconscious bias, explore the impact of bias in the workplace, discuss the detrimental impact of bias in the community, develop strategies to address our own bias, and then at the conclusion of the presentation, you'll have an opportunity to share comments, reflections, and ask questions. So this is your first opportunity to engage. So I am going to invite you to answer the question, what comes to mind when you think of diversity and inclusion? So I'm going to ask you to begin answering and responding to that question in the chat box. So I'll give you a little time to do that.
So respect.
Respect.
Being open and welcome to all people. Anti-discrimination policies and laws. Making sure everyone has a seat at the table, all views are considered. Treating people based on their character and not their appearance. Non-judgment, different cultures, perspective, ideas, transparency, and honesty.
Those are some great comments. And thank you, Yolanda, for reading those, because for some reason I can't see the chat box anymore. So if you could do that for me, I would appreciate that.
Yeah.
All right, so diversity and inclusion are often used interchangeably. However, there is a distinct difference between the two. So Yolanda, I'll invite you to just read the first definition for diversity, please.
Yes. The condition of having or being composed of different elements. Variety, especially the inclusion of different types of people as people of different races or cultures in a group or organization. Programs intended to promote diversity in schools.
Thank you. So as you can see, according to Webster, diversity means being composed of differing elements or qualities or types of people. And yet diversity goes deeper than the visible things we often associate through race and ethnicity. We know that such diversity will enrich us with the talent, energy, perspective, and inspiration we need to achieve organizational goals and objectives. The characteristics that describe differences among people include demographic characteristics such as gender, race, ethnicity, age, national origin, religion, disability status, and sexual orientation. On a deeper level, characteristics can include people's personalities, their values, the things that they're passionate about, and their personal interest. So Yolanda, can you please read the definition for inclusion?
The act or practice of including and accommodating people who have historically been excluded as because of their race, gender, sexuality, or ability, Academic libraries have traditionally struggled to address problems of equity, diversity, and inclusion. The low representation of people of color in library staff has been a particular shortcoming despite many initiatives to attract minority staff to the field.
Thank you. So inclusion is a relational construct. Ultimately, it is about how your team functions and performs based on the quality of social connections. Inclusion happens when people feel they are an insider. They experience a sense of belonging within the organization and feel that they can bring their authentic selves to work and be valued for their uniqueness. So here's your another opportunity. So why is diversity and inclusion relevant in the workplace? If you can please enter your answers in the chat box. So why is diversity and inclusion relevant in the workplace?
So everyone, because we live in a diverse, let's see, equality, teamwork. Teams will function best when everyone's ideas are welcomed and included. Different life experiences give different ideas. Get points of view and ideas from people with different backgrounds. Perspective in all areas of creativity or work. Being diverse perspectives, so a lot of that diverse perspectives answer. Need to use diverse ideas to move forward. Good. Oh, here's one. If your workplace is not diverse and inclusive, you don't know what you don't know, and there is something lacking. That's a good one. Yeah.
Right. Those are all great answers. So thank you so much for actively participating. So now let's talk about bias. So it should be no surprise that we all have them, right? So we have to take ownership. So it's part of our human nature, and it helps us to put things in perspective as we navigate through life and survive. Bias is a natural part of the human mind. It's important to acknowledge we all have biases, and we must recognize the impact they have in the workplace. A particular tendency, trend, inclination, feeling, or opinion, especially one that is preconceived or unreasoned, driving on back roads rather than main highways, a magazine's bias toward art rather than photography, our bias in favor of a car make or model over another. So bias is a personal preference, a like or dislike, especially when the tendency interferes with the ability to be objective. Bias is an attitude or a belief. Our biases can be as simple as preferring chocolate ice cream over vanilla. It's simply a preference. So let's talk more about the types of bias. So unconscious bias. So our discussion today is focused mainly on the workplace, but biases manifest themselves in other areas of our lives at school, our community, places of worship, healthcare institutions, and the justice system. Now let's consider unconscious bias. This type of bias is carried out unconsciously. You could be doing something without realizing it. Everyone's unconscious bias is different according to the unique social factors which influence them and informed the individual that they are today. Unconscious bias can occur when we need to make decisions or judgments. We are not always making well thought out conscious decisions and taking all factors into account. Our brains work quickly and it assesses information which is known and familiar to us first. This information based on your personal experiences, meaning there is natural bias towards views and opinions which fit within your worldview and are most familiar and comfortable. By doing this unconsciously, there's no malicious intent. We often are unaware that we've done it, and we don't realize the impact or implications. Conscious bias, on the other hand, shows up when we intentionally show bias towards a person or a group of people. So in the workplace, imagine you prefer working with men more than women, or you don't like working with young people or those from different cultures. These are all dangerous prejudices. Most people understand that there's no place for this in the workplace. There are laws, policies, and guidelines that exist to prevent prejudice based on race, age, gender identity, physical abilities, religion, sexual orientation, and many other characteristics. Should you act upon prejudices in the workplace, you could probably face disciplinary action, potentially lose your job, and even be charged with a criminal offense. So let's do a reality check. So we've all talked about, we all know that we have bias, so everyone has them. So everyone is capable of having our thoughts and decisions influenced by the lenses of how we view the world, and our personal biases can cause us to react in different ways every day. Bias unchecked can hinder an organization from enjoying the benefits of diversity and inclusion. Ultimately, it will adversely affect your bottom line. So I want to talk about the 4 signs of potential workplace bias. So number 1 is favoritism and exclusion. So favoritism and exclusion. Successful organizations grow and thrive when decisions are made based on merit. We can only claim leadership and innovation if we invite diversity of thought to the table. Inclusion, not exclusion, is the key here. Be sure to include others with different backgrounds when making decisions, planning activities, selecting suppliers, hiring for an open position, or choosing new technology solutions. It's not acceptable to simply say, this person, method, idea, or solution is just not a good fit. Find your answer by asking yourself, why am I not considering alternate solutions or new ideas? Just kidding. So kidding, joking, and virtually every type of humor is highly contextual and directly connected to our individual cultures, upbringing, and life experiences. Whether you think it or not, unconscious bias can be expressed through insensitive comments disguised as a joke about food, clothing, driving habits, or other seemingly harmless topics that can be easily misunderstood. Once the words come out of our mouths, we can't take it back and just simply say, just kidding. Employee morale. So low morale can be attributed to many different issues. One potential indicator that it is of a biased nature is the demographics of the affected employees. Does it seem like younger staff are not as engaged? Each of us has an influence on the work environment. Whether that impact is positive or negative has a lot to do with our biases. We have to keep them in check. So mass exodus. People join organizations for many different reasons. We all own a piece of our organization's culture. The more aware we are, the more respectful we are, and the more we think before we speak, the more appealing the culture will be. Our lack of awareness about our own biases could be driving staff away from our organization and we not even know it. Strategies for dealing with biases. So as we think back, how can we reduce the impact of bias in the workplace and maybe even other areas of our lives? I'd like to share a few strategies for dealing with biases. So first, acknowledge that they exist. So you can't change if you haven't acknowledged that they exist. Take proactive action based on your self-reflections and findings. Develop your own personal accountability system. Monitor and stay on track with these issues identified. Research the topic on your own and expand your knowledge in this area. So why is this so important today? And so Yolanda talked about how we had this conversation probably about a month ago, and we had no idea that we would be in the place that we are today. And so I just wanted to share some of the current events that are connected to some of the information that we've talked about. So we've probably all heard about the Central Park encounter. So I'll call it the Central Park encounter. So we have Amy Cooper exhibiting her personal biases about Black men. So many of us watched the video, and if you haven't, I invite you to watch the video so that you can come to your own conclusion. So those that have watched the video, there have been numerous articles written about this interaction. We all know that there was a specific intent, malicious intent involved in this situation, and the outcome could have been dramatically different. So as I was preparing for today's presentation, I came across a woman from Nigeria, and her name is Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. So forgive me if I pronounced her name incorrectly, so I did my best. So she is a Nigerian author, and she talks about the danger of a single story in her TED Talk. And she says, the problem with stereotypes is not that they are untrue, but they are incomplete. They make one story the only story. The problem with a single story is that it robs people of dignity. It emphasizes how we are different rather than similar. So in the workplace, could a single story you hold about an employee, colleague, or manager result in a tarnished working relationship? A few other questions I'll ask you to ask yourself, or I'll just pose it to the group. Have you ever under or overestimated someone's ability to do their job based on perceived education level or their ethnicity? Have you ever assumed someone lazy based on a stereotype you hold? Every person is a complex individual shaped by their socioeconomic situation, education, family status, health, early life experiences, genetic compositions, etc. Not only will this recognition of the complexity lead to fewer harmful assumptions about our coworkers, but it will give you an opportunity to broaden your own understanding. Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, and George Floyd were victims of the single story. So I want to share a short video as we start to come to a close of the formal presentation. I would like to share a short video with you. So it worked when we tested earlier.
It did work. I don't know what's going on right now. Oh, here, I think it's trying.
I want every white person in this room who would be happy to be treated as this society in general treats our citizens, our Black citizens. If you, as a white person, would be happy to receive the same treatment that our Black citizens do in this society, please stand. You didn't understand the directions. If you white folks want to be treated the way Blacks are in this society, stand. Nobody's standing here. That says very plainly that you know what's happening. You know you don't want it for you. I want to know why you're so willing to accept it or to allow it to happen for others.
So Jane Elliott is an internationally known teacher, lecturer, and diversity trainer. She's well known for her 1968 Blue Eyes and Brown Eyes exercise. You can learn more about her and her work at janeelliott.com. And I just wanted to share that video with you because I thought it was so relevant for the climate that we're in today. And I know it's a sensitive topic, but it's certainly something that I felt compelled to share. So as we come to a close, I want to talk about how do we move forward? And so I have a challenge for you. So I'm going to ask you to be brave, to step outside of your comfort zone. It's only when we let down our walls and allow ourselves to be vulnerable that we can come to a sense of true understanding of others. So I have a request. I'm going to ask you to get to know someone that looks totally different from you. They may have a contrasting worldview or opinion about things. And I want you to invite them to a coffee chat. It could be a virtual coffee chat or in person. And then I want you to approach the conversation with humility, dignity, respect, and understanding. And here are the questions that I would like you to ask. What are some of your life experiences? What issues deeply concern you? What have you always wanted to ask the other side about their perspective? Is there anything that you would like to do to clean up the past? It is through these types of authentic exchanges where change begins. So let me give you a few next steps. So as we close, I'll ask you to identify a key takeaway from the information that I shared today. Determine a specific action that you would like to take to increase awareness of your personal biases, and you have to be specific. Identify what you will do differently based on ideas and perspectives that were shared today. Determine how you will use this information to improve your workplace environment. And before we transition into the Q&A and open dialogue, I just wanted to share a few quotes with you. Strength lies in differences, not similarities. Stephen Covey. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. Margaret Mead. And finally, a nation's culture resides in the hearts and in the souls of its people. Gandhi. So I just want to thank Yolanda and Wynn for inviting me to be a part of this conversation today. And I just hope that we can transition into a very thoughtful and meaningful conversation. And if you have questions that you would like to ask me, Yolanda's going to help me navigate that. So if you have a question, I think she wants you to raise your hand so that she could unmute you or
yeah, so I'm going to stop the recording right now, Lisa. Thank you so much for that.